So today is July 7th, 2021. My name is Maria Saldana and I'm here with Carla. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Can you start by telling me when and where you were born?
So I was born in Lima, Peru in 1995. I can't remember the subsection of Lima, but
yeah, that's fine. Okay, so Lima, Peru, 1995. And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Lima, in Chorrillos, actually. And I lived there until I was 9.
Okay. So you said Chorrillos?
Yeah.
Okay, and so you were 9. And where is your family from?
So my parents are from Peru. My grandparents are all from Peru. My great-grandparents are all from Peru. And then I think from my great-great-grandparents, one is from Italy, one is from France, and one is from Spain. Well, or they go back different, but those are included in my Peruvian family.
And all right, so your family's from Peru for, I'm gonna say as far back as you can trace, and then you have a few other.
Yeah.
Okay, a few other roots. And then, so where are you currently? You said you were in Chorrillos until you were about 9.
Yes, right now I live in Tallahassee, Florida. But I also finished out my childhood, early teens in South Florida.
I have only been to Tallahassee once to visit a friend. But cool. So what area in South Florida?
Like Fort Lauderdale-ish. I'm from Weston.
Yeah. Okay, dope. I know exactly where that is.
Yeah, South Florida kids know about Weston.
Yeah, I know where that is. So would you share a little bit about your relationship to your Peruvian identity?
Yeah, so I do think for a long time, I was like, I'm not American, like I am 100%, because I felt a lot of negative feelings about that. Obviously now, after being here since I was 9, so that's almost 20 years. Yeah, like 17 years. Obviously that's changed. Like I live my daily life here. So, but I like inherently and intrinsically know myself as Peruvian. Most of my developmental times were, I guess, formed there. And I go back as many times as I can. It's not super possible every year, but yeah, I feel super tied to it and the culture and just the country and the people.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. So I'm hearing you name, initial feelings of like, not maybe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, right? But like not feeling like you could claim this American identity, right? And I'm hearing that you say that it's also shift. Can you expand a little bit more about maybe where you're at now and thinking about, you said, you feel inherently Peruvian, but it's changed, right? Could you just?
Yeah. So I think obviously the process of like going through naturalization helped, not help, but it formed a lot of developments within me. For a very, very long time, was like anti. I don't want to get too deep. Yeah, I just had a lot of American identity.
Hello?
You're from?
Yeah, you froze a little bit.
Yes.
So I got.
What was the last thing you heard?
So I got that you said that the process of naturalization, right, influenced that, and then from there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's really complicated because I still have a lot of complicated feelings about it, and I don't know. I've always had negative feelings, obviously, about being in America and other Americans, and even sometimes other Latinos who were not like from like immigrants, because I was like, you don't know what it's really like. And I don't know, it was tough for a while. And like every other immigrant, like going through the, like being immersed in America and just like not really knowing which exact group you fit in, which was, I'm trying to figure out how to explain it. It like in South Florida, it was much easier to find other people like me, obviously. In Tallahassee, it's a lot harder to find people like me. But, you know, I'm not trying to feel negative feelings about the country that I live in now. I know that I can do good work here and like help other people like me here, as I'm trying to get into, I'm going into my social work master's this year. So realizing that I want to go into social work also helped a lot in like taking a lot of anger out of me. Just a lot of complicated feelings that I had my whole life towards that. But I feel super secure in my like Latina-ness and my Latina, like Peruvian American identity. Obviously, I cannot compare my life to someone that did live in Peru their whole life. And I also can't compare myself to someone who only lived in the United States their whole life. So I think just thinking back on my own life, I don't know, I just feel more of a sense of security in really knowing who I am than before. I just felt I was really confused about it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for you know, expanding on what that process was like for you, because I think that you know, you're describing almost it sounds like, you know, coming to terms with this, you know, at least geographic location that you're in now, and also coming to terms with the fact that, you know, you did migrate here, right? And so you're almost, it sounds like a duality of, you know, a Peruvian American identity. And I'm also glad to hear that you feel secure in it now.
Yeah.
That process is difficult and it is complex, right? For so many reasons, for so many factors. And, you know, also me just wanting to validate that you're not alone in those feelings.
Yeah.
Because I can definitely relate.
Yeah.
So is it meaningful for you to have a relationship to Peru or to your Peruvian identity?
Yes. So I feel drawn to it. Like I feel like I'm tied to it, and I can't, sometimes I like cannot stop thinking about it. You know, I like binge YouTube videos of people just touring around and eating Peruvian food because it's hard up here in Tallahassee. There's not a single Peruvian restaurant, so I have to make all the food myself. And there's some things that I simply cannot make because I can't get the ingredients or, you know, whatever. So I think that also influences me to even be more about it, you know. When I'm in South Florida, like I'm surrounded by my family who's all Peruvian. Paused again for me.
Yeah, it paused again for me. You're okay.
It paused. Yeah. Okay. I was saying that in South Florida, like I am surrounded by my Peruvian family. I eat Peruvian food that my mom and my grandma cooks. I go to Peruvian restaurants all the time. So it's almost like I'm closer to it there. But in Tallahassee, I just feel so far away from it. So it's really on my mind a lot. And, you know, I'm constantly looking up plane tickets and stuff to see when the next time I can go is, but it's really tough, especially with COVID, obviously.
Yeah, I'm hearing what it's meant for you to maintain this relationship, right, in different locations, even within Florida. I think in Gainesville, we just got a Peruvian restaurant.
Yeah, the one that's on Tennessee. Yes.
Yeah, like
it's like Pollo a la Brasa.
I don't even know if it's that one, but we got like this one and it's not even fully Peruvian food. It's like a fusion of foods. And to me, that's still like, it's not the same.
Yeah, it's not. It's never the same, but it's also the least you can get. So yeah.
So that's real, you know, and not having access to things like food, right? Or to the ingredients to even be able to. And shout out to you for making food, the Peruvian food, because I cannot. But it's difficult, right? When you don't have access to it. See it around you. And even in South Florida, I think that there's a little bit more, you see a little bit more of an immigrant Latinx population, I would say, at least in my experience being here in Gainesville. It's not that I don't, and it's not that I don't see other immigrants, other Peruvians, right? But it's not the way it was in South Florida. Even in South Florida, I didn't see that many Peruvians.
Yes, I feel exactly the same. And just the food is what really gets me. And I love cooking, but it's hard to get it to taste the same way that your mom's does. And I have to rely on my parents either traveling back to Peru to get me like ají amarillo, like ají panca, the like culantro sauce, the ceviche mix, or the like, even just the like instant soup mixes, because they taste better than the ones here. So yeah, it's really tough, but I do my best, and I have to make all the Peruvian recipes dairy free. So I'm always experimenting with that.
Yeah. Do you make them vegan?
Not fully vegan, no, just dairy free. Yeah. Sometimes vegan. I actually have made like, I made abuelito vegan one time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Nice. I don't know if you follow Plant-Based Inca on Instagram. But it's an account run by like my friend Nico, who has a lot of vegan Peruvian recipes. So I would check that out if you but yeah, you know, it's also, you're naming, you know, it's hard to go back to Peru, I think.
Yeah.
Right? When you are in the diaspora, you're outside of Peru. It's not like it's like a weekend trip, right? It's often families are saving the whole year. It's often that, you know, it's a longer trip usually, you know, because even getting to Peru from certain areas is harder. It's a longer time, you know. So yeah, even naming the way that access is limited to, right? So then how do you maintain your relationship with Peru or your Peruvian identity? You name watching the videos of people traveling, you name trying to cook. How else, if there is?
So yes, definitely. I binge watch people who travel to Peru. I also really like the non-Peruvian videos of people traveling to Peru. Most of them, because it just makes me so happy. Mostly it's always centered about the food, but yeah, they just get so happy being there, and I just love experiencing that like secondhand. I love cooking, so I'm constantly cooking Peruvian food or asking my mom how to make something. What else? I mean, I talk to my family all the time. Recently, so my girlfriend is really into history and stuff. So whenever we go to a specific place, she like already has like 10 websites pulled up about a place and like is telling me the whole history of it. Like she did the first time I took her to Weston, she was like telling me how Weston even became a city. And I was like, I've never heard of that before, even though I lived there for so long. So, and she's obviously super interested in Peru. So she's constantly doing all this research about it and like listening to podcasts about it. And she was listening to one about it was different empires around the world. So she listened to one about the Incan Empire, and I learned like 10 times more than I've ever learned about the Inca empires through her. And so that's another way. It's like through her, I'm getting information about my own country. Obviously the election recently, like I was keeping up to date with all of that during the protests because of the president that was kicked out. I was very in touch with it. And I actually have a lot of friends that also live in Peru. Some of them, like people that I knew when I was going to school there, that I somehow still have on my social media, and I just recently started talking to again. And then other friends that I actually made through the internet, like after moving out and living in the United States, and just randomly finding Peruvians on there, that I become friends with, specifically other queer Peruvians, obviously, because it's not like you could just walk anywhere and really become friends with another lesbian or another gay or queer Peruvian, or even non-binary or trans. Yeah,
those they sound like really really important ways. I hear that you've been able to maintain this connection, right? And I love that your girlfriend is even so interested, you know, in Peru and in Peruvian history. And, you know, the friends and the family, I also feel like the past few months have been really crucial in like Peru, like just with the coup, the protests, the elections, you know, it's at least for me, it's been really at the forefront of my mind. And I think that, you know, when I speak to other folks in the diaspora, they feel similarly. And so I'm curious as to how the experience of living in the diaspora has affected your Peruvian identity.
I feel like in every single way of the world, like I could not imagine myself I constantly think about like what would it have been like if I had grown up there, if I had never moved out. But I never think of it like, what if I had never lived there? Also, I always just try to think like what my life would have become. And that like brings up so many thoughts. Like, obviously, I feel like, well, I know that in Peru, I have a lot more privilege than I have here because of my like European ancestry. So like, and in Peru, my family was considered like upper middle class, as opposed to here being like lower middle class. So I do feel like my life is like extremely different. I remember moving here and thinking that I had entered like a different universe, like especially in South Florida with the clear skies and the palm trees. I was literally like, why does the sky look like Toy Story wallpaper? I couldn't understand it. And I thought I had literally entered a different dimension. And it took me a while to morph both worlds together as well. So yeah, I think it's influenced every single part of my life.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm thinking of, I've been to Lima. My family's from Iquitos, but you know, we always fly into Lima.
Yeah.
And it's true, right? The difference even in the sky, because it's not, you know, it's coastal and people would imagine palm trees, I think, right?
Yes.
But that's not Lima.
Yeah.
And you know, I also hear you saying how it has affected, you know, like almost every aspect of your identity, right? Like how could it have not? And those questions, you know, that you have are valid. I personally think of them as well. You know, I left Iquitos really young, but it still has heavily influenced me. And so again, right, you're not alone in having those thoughts. And, you know, I think a part of the reason why I was really interested in doing this project, right, with other queer Peruvians in the diaspora is because, like, I personally didn't see as many of us growing up. And like you mentioned, right, you named earlier having formed online connections with other queer Peruvians and how it's difficult to think of doing that like in person. I don't see them, right? Like I don't see us around.
Yeah.
I see us on my social media, right?
Yes.
And so a part of it was that, right? I knew that being queer and Peruvian was really central to how I lived my life, how I identify. But also, you know, I'm sitting in academia in this position of privilege. And I also didn't see our stories, right? I didn't see queer Peruvians in the text, us really being centered. And so I think that's a little bit of why I'm archiving. And I would have just liked to know that there were more of us out there.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that we can shift a little bit into talking about queerness and queer identity.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk to me then about your queer identity?
Yeah, of course. So I came out as a lesbian like 4, maybe 5, almost 5 years. Yeah, almost 5 years ago. Before that, I identified as bisexual for a bit. And before that, I didn't identify as anything, and I refused to talk about that kind of stuff with anyone. So I remember growing up, I never knew it as a child or as a teen. As an adult, no, as a teen, I realized that my family actually has not a lot, but does have queer representation in there. So I have 2 gay uncles who are my mom's age, so they're her cousins. They're technically my cousins, but you know how that is. So it's, and I had some other family members that were very seemingly not straight. So I was surrounded by it, but obviously I didn't know as a child, and I never got talked to about it. It was a topic that my family ignored talking about. Maybe little comments here and there, and obviously, like, there's a lot of slurs that are used very casually in Peruvian conversation. So I heard that kind of stuff all the time. I got told the story about Maria la Marimacha when I was younger, like all these kinds of things that weren't telling me like, oh, gay people are evil and you're going to hell if this is what you're interested in, but more of like, this is weird, this is strange, it's not normal, maybe we're not supposed to be talking about this right now. So I remember being a kid and feeling like different feelings. I remember making up like the boy that I had a crush on in school to my girlfriends. And when I lived in Peru, like I was literally like, we're all talking about this, so I got to pick one of them so that I can also talk to them about this. And that's something that I carried on and kept doing throughout my life. So it became really hard to, I guess, identify these feelings that I was having around men specifically. Excuse me, I didn't come out technically as bi, but I just started calling myself that because I knew that I like girls it was like at the end of high school that I was realizing this. I was kissing my friends. Like I was definitely like, there's definitely something here and I've known this, but I just was like pushing it down so hard. But I still was dating men because what my theory now is, obviously, is just based on compulsory heterosexuality and the validity and the like amazing feeling that I would get when I was like being interrogated about a guy that I was dating or being seen with a guy out walking the street, like the attention that my family placed on me when I was doing that. And also the attention that I was just getting, like I'm deeply afraid of rejection. So so I didn't let myself also date anyone really easily. Like it took a long time for me to find a partner. It was never anything super long term with men. But it just became like my feelings, and I guess identifying my feelings of like feeling liked and appreciated, and my romantic feelings were being kind of intertwined. But at the same time, I was like hanging out with a guy that I was interested in and being like, oh, this is going to end so badly. Like, why am I doing this? I'm so bored right now. I don't want to watch him play video games. Like, that sounds like the worst thing ever to me. And I just am sitting here doing it all the time. Like, for what? For a text? Like, for a handhold? Like, it was. So I went through a lot of stuff. And later on in college, I went through a lot too with guys, bad experiences. And I don't know, it just took me a really long time to identify my feelings, which I also think is a thing that came from my family. I don't think it's a specifically a Peruvian characteristic, but I think a lot of Latinos would relate, that like talking about your feelings is bad. So I never have talked about my feelings. You know, I tried going to therapy and I would feel like I'm just an actor in front of a therapist. I'm just regurgitating what like I think will make me sound good. I don't know. It was super complex, and I like just straight up did not know how to identify what I was truly feeling. And that took me a very long time, obviously a lot of mistakes, to realize and to really, really, I don't think I know myself fully, but to know myself just better than I ever had before. So, and also going through college, making more queer friends, that kind of stuff really helped as well. So yeah, I came out as a lesbian to my mom over FaceTime during my senior year of college. It wasn't too bad. It also wasn't great. She had asked me once when I was in high school if I was gay, but she says that she doesn't remember that at all. And there were a lot of tough feelings there because she kept saying like, I don't know, you seem to really like these guys that you dated and like, you're so girly and all that stereotypical stuff too. And she also tried placing a lot of blame on my friends too, like on my obviously very queer, very alternative friend group that I was in. And she was like, you know, trying to say that this was influencing me. But I was like, no, I just think that you don't know about this life that I'm having. Like, I don't think you understand how off I felt as a child and how weird I felt and how messed up and sick I was feeling as a child, like repressing all these emotions and acting like a freak around my classmates, which is also due to having like mental health disorders and ADHD, which I didn't even realize until last year. So, well, I guess I could touch on that later, but yeah, so it was complicated, but having gay family members helped immensely. Like I owe it all to them because they were the ones that really went through it. And like the things that I've heard from their parents are super messed up. So yeah, I think that put a cushion down with my family. We're still working on it, but you know, they're never gonna deny us anything. In the end, all my sisters and I have two sisters and we're all queer. So it's like, you know, each one provided the cushioning for the next. So it's a pretty good situation now. But yeah, now I'm just comfortable in calling myself a lesbian. Once I realized that was I didn't want to like obviously box myself either, but it just made so much sense once I came to that realization. Never had it crossed my mind that I was not into men, until it did, and then it just clicked and it made so much sense. And now I've been dating my girlfriend for 4.5 years, so that also helps a lot with the family. Like when you're in a long-term relationship with someone that is really good and they can see that, that also really helps. Yeah, because I can't imagine if I had just, I don't know, had some rowdy girlfriend or something. But yeah.
Thank you for sharing all of that with me and for allowing me to hear what your journey has been so far with queerness. You know, and I think that for queer folks, we're allowed to shift within our identity, right? Like you're allowed to move in ways that feel right to us and feel us. Sometimes I feel like there is a pressure, right, in finding that label or that identity that fits. But there's also, you know, I think a beauty in allowing ourselves to move in ways that feel good. you also name this compulsory hetero sexuality, and it also sounds like, naming perceptions from other people that have influenced the way that were able to come to terms with your own queerness. Oh, I don't know if you
It's pausing again for me.
Oh, you're good. Hi.
Can you hear? Okay.
Okay, you're okay. I'm just making notes of when it cuts. I'm so sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay.
Um,
Yeah. Well, what another point is that I also, like, my girlfriend and I have very similar experiences with coming out, except she's just American. And we always talk about it, our journeys through this process of coming out. And I'm always like, I'm not going to say that I was never bi or never truly into like a man that I was seeing. Because I think those feelings at the time were super real. And like, even though at the same time I was having these confused, like questioning feelings, I was also having like, I don't know, I get real feelings towards these men. But it was never at a point where I was like, I can spend my whole life with them. Like it always was like picking out flaws or like thinking that my standards were super high and like all this stuff. And I don't want to say that I like never had a crush on a man. Like I think that I did. I felt those feelings, but it never ever felt like how I do with women. Never have I had those same thoughts with my girlfriend now or any other woman that I've had a crush on. So that also influenced me a lot. Just realizing that I was never going to be able to have like a stable relationship with a man. Yeah, and I just became so detached from that. So I do think that the fluidity within sexuality is very real and really important to talk about because, you just have to be safe, not be with the wrong kinds of people. But it's fun to experiment and find the people that you feel really secure and safe with.
Yeah, and you naming having those feelings at the time, right? They were real and they were valid. And I think that when we shift, right, it doesn't negate the other that we're changing. And I also hear, what it has meant for you to settle, into your identity now. And so what does queerness mean to you?
I don't know. It means so much to me. I always felt an affinity for like the LGBT community. I always was sneakily watching the Logo channel. I came across But I'm a Cheerleader at a young age. That was a very influential movie for a lot of us. So I don't know, it's just shaped so much of my life, the way that I view the world. Not to say that like straight people have a limited view of the world. Obviously, that's not something that you can apply to all of them. But I don't know, there's just like experiences that you get from being queer and or for being a part of the LGBT community that only other people who are part of the same community know about. And we can compare our little coping mechanisms or like what we do when we enter a campsite that's full of like Trump supporters, especially living in the South, like it shapes a lot of what I do, where I can view my safetyness, like how I can view my safetyness and, who I can come out to, who I can not come out to, or who I just know I need a little bit more time around to see how they are, and what their opinions are. But yeah, I don't know. It just means a lot to me. And like all of my friends are queer. I don't have a single straight friend, besides my girlfriend's brother. So it's just, I mean, it's completely, it just completely is so much of a part of my life. So I'm just attached to it very deeply.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a big part of your life, right? Who is around you and how you move through the world. And you named having, these queer friends. So what does queer community mean for you? Do you think you found a queer community?
Yes. It's hard to finding it in person. I remember like in college attempting to go to like the meetings. I don't know what the student organization is called, but not really finding anyone there that I would click with. I remember going to I went to UF, so the UC I went to a couple times. But I went with my friends, so obviously. Once I went to college and I started befriending more people, and it was also more common to come out, obviously from high school. A lot of people are closeted in high school. I was closeted in high school. In college, a lot more people were coming out. A lot more people were like experimenting and doing all sorts of things. So I forgot what the question was.
Yeah. So one was, what does queer community mean to you?
Yeah.
And then just if you found one.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, over time, I became not strict, but, I started limiting my friend circle a lot. I had a lot of bad experiences in college with, people who did wild stuff that they shouldn't have been doing. So that caused me to just think more and like really think about what I truly enjoy and like what kind of quality time that I want to spend with my friends. Like, I don't want to, I don't know, just like, I don't want to just like do drugs and party all the time. Like even though that's also fun, I also want to like sit on the couch and watch YouTube videos with my friends. So, and I also want my friends to have a specific, kind of political view. I don't know. I just want to, I'm very, not strict, but just specific about the kind of people that I mesh with. And, being like mentally ill and having ADHD, I have a lot of like social problems, social anxiety, that kind of stuff. So it was hard. It was hard to, even if the people around me were like queer, it was hard to be super social with them. So, learning more about myself, learning what I like, what conversations I want to have, led me to have a really close-knit group of friends who are all queer. And yeah, it feels like my family at this point. Like, I would talk to them about anything. I can, like, even if I have a problem with any of them, I can talk to them with no problem at all. It feels comfortable. It feels like real love, like in my heart, way more than some of my like extended family would feel to me. So I don't know, that's just so important. It's so important to surround yourself with people like you, and people who know what your experience is like. I don't know if I'm describing that correctly, but like just that you like people who have gone through the same experiences as you, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I would say my friends like helped me with anything, defended me from anyone that I needed to be defended from. So yeah, it's just been super important for me to have this group of friends. Even through, we're all like around the country, like we're not all in one place anymore, like we used to be, but we keep in touch every day. We have like a Discord with all of us. Through the pandemic, you know, we were hanging out every weekend over Discord. So I never feel lonely. I never feel like I have feelings that I can't talk to anyone about. Like, even if I have anger towards a friend, like I never feel like I have to keep that inside of me and like not have like a full discussion with them to try and see where the origin of the problem is, or like how to take my own responsibility. I never feel scared to take responsibility for anything that I do wrong around them. So that it like seems too good to be true almost, but yeah, like once, especially if you're queer, if you find a group of friends like that, there's nothing better than that.
Right. And it sounds like, you know, your friends and you know, these people that you have established these relationships with, right? It sounds very nourishing, right? It sounds like you are able to exist fully with them, and that's really beautiful to hear. You also touched on, you know, this piece of allowing yourself to feel your range of emotions, to take responsibility, right? To be able to hold each other accountable, and that's great. You know, I think of this notion that often exists within queer folks of finding a chosen family, right? And claiming that, you know, your friends feel closer than some extended family, right? That's real. And I'm also curious then, you know, you're talking about finding this group of people in college and you know, maintaining these connections, but you know, on another note, I'm curious what it means for you to simultaneously identify as Peruvian and queer.
Yeah, so I have a couple of friends who are also like Latino and queer, but I don't have any friends that are like immigrants and queer at the same time. So I feel like I don't have a lot of relatability there. Like my best friend, her family's from Uruguay, so I do have a lot of relatability with her, and you know, the things that she describes within her family are very similar to what I would describe of my family. But other than that, there's quite a disconnect there from like that in my friends. I don't think they would understand a lot about being Peruvian unless they obviously went there and experienced and learned more about it. Into 2018, I went to Peru with my girlfriend. And obviously that was my first time being there as like knowing myself as a lesbian. And then on top of that, being there with my girlfriend, and having to be more careful with her, like really analyzing what situations I could hold her hand in, or, you know, I'm normally a very, very affectionate person, physically like attentive. So, you know, having to restrict myself from that, or I went to like my uncle's country club, and like there were little kids running around being like, las lesbianas, and like pointing at us. And I was just like, holy shit, like it's so different and so much harder to be like an openly queer person in Peru. It's like a level that I cannot, like with my daily life, I could not even see myself doing. So, you know, I'm constantly thinking about that. I'm constantly thinking about my friends that live there that are also in like gay relationships, you know, and, you know, the fact that they're as old as me and they still haven't come out to their parents. Okay, it didn't freeze. I thought it froze for a second. And the way that the things that they describe, obviously not even being able to live together, like that's something that I didn't even have to think about with my girlfriend. we came out to our landlord immediately, and she was like, oh my God, that's so cute. But like, I can't, it's just such a completely different situation over there. And that's obviously not to say that there's not accepting people in Peru. Like, there 100% are, and I know a lot of them. But at the same time, with the amount of hate crimes that go on there, the numbers are a lot higher than they are in the States, even though it's already such a bad situation here. And, the death, just like, yeah, seeing the deaths of multiple trans women every single year in Peru, just all of that, I think about it a lot, and I'm quite aware of it. So, that's another thing that really influences the way that I see myself as a Peruvian American, because I know what kind of privilege I have within being in the States. And I'm just so much more aware of what about what LGBT people have to go through in Peru. And I don't know, it's something that I think about a lot. It is.
Absolutely. And thank you for naming all of those things and sharing that with me, because I hear you naming this difference that you experienced, right, when you got to Peru with your girlfriend, and having to navigate notions of, visibility, of safety, and then also dealing with people's perceptions in Peru, right? Like, you're there visiting, right? Whether you were born there, you lived there for some time, but it's different, I feel, when you go back and now you're navigating it in a different dynamic, right? People are looking differently. And then you touching on the privilege of it is to be openly queer here in the States, right? It is like, and it's not like you mentioned, it's not to say that there's not supportive people. It's not to say that there's not openly queer trans folks in Peru, and there's still a difference. And so I'm curious then if you feel that your identities coexist in the same spaces.
I guess that's a really interesting question, because within me, I would say 100% yes. But I do think that in the US, like, people don't immediately know where I'm from. I've never gotten anyone that thinks that I'm from the US, but they're always like, oh, you're Asian, you're, Chinese, you're Filipina. Sometimes they're like, you're, from any other country in Latin America other than Peru. I've gotten all of those. And my whole life, I've gotten told that I look Asian. Like, in Peru, I got called chinita, chinis, everywhere I went. So I don't know, I'm trying to put my thoughts together on it, because it is a lot different. Understanding that I don't come off immediately as Peruvian or even Latina sometimes. And, I don't know, I like to think that I give off like lesbian energy, and that anyone that comes around me would know, but, that's clearly not true, especially, unfortunately, if I'm dressed like more feminine or whatever. It's not something that people immediately realize. So I don't know, that also influences the way that I act, the way that I see myself. Like I said, inherently, like, I would say, yes, those two identities are living together within me. Like, everything's, meshed into one. But I think externally, that doesn't come off immediately to other people, and the way that I'm treated by other people, like, influences the way that I am in that specific situation. So, like, in my head, I'm always like, I'm like, I need people to know that I'm a lesbian. I need people to know that I'm a Latina, but I'm not going around being like, woohoo, I'm a lesbian, I'm a Latina, I'm Peruvian, I was born in Lima, like, I'm an immigrant. I don't go around and act like that. So and I don't want to like have conversations with everyone about my identity also, especially at work or in just casual situations. So yeah, I don't know. I've never really thought about it that much, but I do think externally, like it's not necessarily like both identities are not necessarily coexisting, but inherently they are, like internally they are.
That makes sense. Yeah. And it makes sense because I feel like there's a difference, between how we see ourselves versus how other people are going to see us, right? And that again shifts on the spaces that we're in. It shifts on who we're around, right? And who knows us. And also you naming that, you don't want to have these conversations with everyone about your identity. Well, that's valid too, right? Because I don't think that everyone necessarily is deserving of knowing these parts of ourselves, right? That's something that's very very personal and sacred to be able to share. Really, really crucial and like you named, inherent parts of ourselves.
Yeah. I think like I said, I want to come off to people as like a Peruvian and a lesbian. Obviously that's so specific. Nobody's just gonna name that right off the bat. But like in situations where people assume that I'm from somewhere else or like know that I'm Peruvian, but then don't know that I was born there, and like I never told them, so why would they know? But I get so offended sometimes because I'm like, what? You didn't know that I was born in Peru in 1995 in Lima and wherever? Like, but I've gotten a lot better with that, obviously. But I don't know. Always initially, there's this like super shocked reaction. Like, how could you not know? Of course I am. But that's just a whole different story. Like everyone's living their own lives. They're not all inspecting mine.
Yeah, what it means, to I think to be able to be seen, right? To be able to be seen fully. I hear that come up, when I speak to folks about what it means for them to be read as something other than, as someone other than queer Peruvian, and that's again valid because I think that, being a Peruvian outside of Peru, right? You're in Peru, people assume that you're Peruvian.
Yeah.
But then here, when you are outside of it, when you're living in the States or, wherever else, that's not an assumption that people make, right? So that's a very real experience. And earlier you touched on, the disproportionate amounts of like harm and violence that we hear about in Peru, right? It's not like it's not happening in the States. It definitely is.
Yeah.
And queer and trans folks, often, pay for it with their lives, here. Yeah. And so this might be a big question. And again, like I also want to name that you don't need to be perfect in articulating, answers to these questions. It's, but, my question to you then is, knowing that, how do we as queer Peruvians, survive this harm? How are we, or how do we move after we experience this pain?
I think like any other kind of grief process, I don't know, like going through the 5 stages of grief or whatever that is, there's always going to be pain. There's always going to be sadness. There's always going to be rejection from society, from, religion, from culture, like all these other things. That's going to remain. And like violence against people who are LGBT is never going to go away. I'm not going to say that because I really, really want it to one day. But those kinds of negative beliefs are just so I don't know, like entrenched. I don't know if that's a word, but into like, I don't want to say like Christianity because that's a whole other discussion, but like I grew up Catholic and Peru is a Catholic country. and America, like as much as they want to say that there's no religion here, the vast majority are Christians, and that really influences the politics and the beliefs that people have, however wrong or right they may be. So it's just never, I don't ever see it, within my lifetime ever fully going away, as much as I would like it to. So it's too much sometimes to even think about. The like I said, the pain and the sadness and just the entire grief process. And obviously that's something that some people just cannot deal with, which is just even adds to the sadness and the pain. So I don't know if there's a specific solution. I don't, whatever. That's like more about social change and I don't know, attempting to fix a problem that is just so wide. And so I'm not really sure, but the best thing that I can do is be there for other people, talking about it, like with people like you, with younger people, like exposing younger people to people like me and people similar to me. I don't know, that also, it really ties in with what I want to do as a social worker, because it's not, I don't know if it's like I feel a debt, like I have a debt, but I feel like, what the heck else am I going to do if this like pain and sadness is just going to be around all the time? The least I can do is like try and offer support, not just through my career, but in my personal life. Yeah, I don't know, just with, I don't have, any professional experience within social work as of yet, but I work in the Office of Accessibility Services at the school that I work at, and I have these kinds of conversations all the time. I supervise these work studying students, and some of them I become super close to, and like I'm able to tell them a lot of stuff about what I went through. Some of them have come out to me, have told me stories about their lives, like, their family lives, all this other stuff. So I feel like like I said, the best thing that we could do is communicate and find each other. That's obviously becomes super easy through social media. We're not going to get to everyone, like understanding that this is not a problem that is going to simply go away and everything will be magical and perfect, because nothing works like that. We're working within a system that is built to oppress us and a lot of other different kinds of people as well. So the thing is just sticking together and working against this system. I think starting systemic change is like unbelievably hard. Like just thinking about having to like become a politician or like get into policy writing or anything like that, it's really tough. And like I've always had the opinion that like you have to sell a part of your soul to be able to do that, because there's so much stuff that you just have to like see and not say anything about as well. So my own philosophy is like to just, whoever is within an arm's reach, that you feel like could use your help or just could use someone to talk to or anything like that, just answer some questions for them, no matter what they are. I feel like I'm a pretty open book nowadays. I didn't used to be, but I realized that talking about it, I don't know, I was so afraid of like coming off like a weirdo and a freak before. So I don't know, I've learned so much through everything that I've gone through, and also through like my friends' experiences too, and through different kinds of things that I read and see. So I don't know, just finding little ways to be there for people that are immediately around you. That's the way that I see it, like one of the easiest and best things that we can do for each other. I do feel, I don't feel like pessimistic about the future, but I think thinking about it within like, I don't even know. I never gone that deep into it, but yeah, I just think it's so hard to do it systemic, like on a big scale. And a lot of people who have tried, get, mess up. They always mess up in some little way and get super criticized, and like maybe they did such good things in one thing, but then like messed up in the other, and like the crowd turns against them. And I just like, that's not, I don't know. There's just something off with the way like social media and the internet has influenced politics. And there's a lot of good things about it as well. Like, I like that we're able to talk about the flaws within our politicians or whatever. And I don't know. I'm very like, I don't want to get into any kind of like politics like that, because it's really scary, and it's hard to see like real changes being made, and like little things get done here and there, but it's just so hard to put my full trust into it. So yeah, like I said, my philosophy is very like centralized, and like I could do more things for the people around me than for like the whole country all at once. That's like impossible unless we're all doing it together. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for naming all of those different levels. I think, when thinking about how we move forward, you naming one, this point about grief, right? And allowing ourselves, I think, to grieve what we have gone through, what we have experienced. Also, you touched on being a source of support, right, of help to other people, being able to be that person for the folks around you. It sounds like you do a bit of mentoring, even in the role that you're in for work, and that's powerful too, right? That allows people to grow together. I feel, to be able to evolve, and I also hear you naming, what it might mean to think about this question on a larger scale, right? In terms of systemic change, of structural change, when, as you named, right, the structures that we currently exist under, right, were not meant to really sustain us, right? They weren't meant to support us at all, right? Queer trans. And so I hear you, right? That's not a change that is going to happen overnight. And like you, I think that there are ways that I have seen happen within my community, within people that I'm around, that do things like provide care, right? Like allow people to have grief. Even you going into social work, like there are different ways that I think making those movements, it shapes change, right? It allows us to change. Maybe one person can't change the entire country, but I think there are multiple people that are willing to do that. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. And I wonder if there are any other identities that are salient to you. You named your lesbian identity, your Peruvian identity, being an immigrant. I wonder if there are any others that you want to share that you would like to elaborate on.
Yeah, so I do consider myself a disabled person. Starting off my work at the Office of Disability Services at FSU, I felt I worked at FSU for 1.5 years, and it kept coming up to my mind. I was like, that's an office that I want to work in. I want to work in that office. Like, I think I like the work that they're doing in that office. So I was able to find a position there, and, they really liked me because all this, social justice mindset and like being student focused and bringing up that I had myself had struggled through school a lot, and I always looked at like on the syllabus that they were able to, you know, students with disabilities were able to get accommodations, but never thinking like, oh, that applies to me, because similarly to how other Latino people might feel, like my family doesn't, it's not like they don't believe in mental health, but like they think that you can get yourself through anything, and like you just have to pray or go to church or whatever to rid yourself of demons. So it was really hard for me in school. I always wondered, you know, is everyone else like having to work this hard? Because like I'm reading this stuff and I'm not understanding it at all. And then like I'm falling asleep all the time. Like, is it normal? Am I just lazy? Am I like not intelligent? Like my grades were pretty good, but I felt like I wasn't learning anything. And like when it came to tests, I was doing horribly at tests, on tests. So you know, that's something that I always thought about. So I started working for this office, and the more that I talked to the students that were there, the more that I was like, oh, like these are my people. Like I relate so much to all of them. And I can't believe that I went through undergrad in just public school without accommodations. So I've learned so much about the Americans with Disabilities Act with my time at school. I went through a whole like psychological evaluation. You know, I started seeing a psychiatrist, and you know, it's not like I was searching. I always knew that I had like emotional issues, but I didn't understand. I never got like a specific diagnosis for anything, even with the past counselors and therapists that I saw. So finally understanding how the process works, because there's this like I said, a system in place, and that system only allows like, you know, mostly upper, you know, wealthy people to be able to go see a doctor and get evaluated at an early age, and have a mom who's like working at home, so she's able to keep an eye on everything that the kid does, or a dad, or parents that speak the language that can call the school for you, like that kind of stuff, right? So I learned how the system works, and that's another thing that I'm really passionate in, because there's a lot of students out there that went through the same thing I did, or even worse, you know, or having like learning disabilities that affect them even more than I could even imagine. And that stuff is super, you know, we're still learning so much about those kinds of disabilities and conditions. And there's a lot of biases against those kinds of things. And, you know, we deal with professors all the time who, it's like they're very suspicious of students that use accommodations. And yeah, so like I said, I learned how the system works. I went and got myself evaluated. You know, I had to pay a lot of money out of pocket to get it done, even with insurance, which also tells you, you know, so much more about, because most of these students are getting evaluated in public school, you know, like when they have a school therapist that notices that something, or like a teacher that notices something is going on with a student, and then they refer them to the school psychologist, and then they get evaluated, and they're able to get their accommodation, like starting from 5th grade, 6th grade, whatever. But there's so many people that never got that attention from a teacher, never got the suggestion to go see the school therapist, or, you know, schools that don't even have therapists at all. Who, you know, these students just never wouldn't know that they have something going on. Instead, they just think like how I was feeling, lazy and, you know, dumb, and like, yeah, mostly just lazy and dumb, and like you don't belong in this academic world. Which I even still feel like I'm like, you know, my brain works very differently from how a lot of other students that I hung out with did as well. So yeah, so I got evaluated. I got, you know, a variety of diagnoses, but the more poignant one that I was trying to get evaluated for was ADHD, and I got that diagnosis. But then later on, with my psychiatrist, realized that I also have OCD, which wasn't even screened for during my original psychological evaluation, because I guess people don't really realize that could be that OCD is like comorbid with ADHD. And then once she told me that, I was like, oh, because in my mind, as I was going through this process of getting evaluated, I was like, I 100% have ADHD. I really know that I have it, because now I've been talking to so many people and like researching more about it. And it's been more of a conversation too with just society. But then being thrown like the OCD diagnosis at me, that really changed a lot of what I was thinking, mostly because a lot of people tend to think that OCD is about like just like the stereotypical like having to touch something 5 times, or like stepping on a certain spot or whatever, or being super clean and organized, which I never have been. So I never thought that I would have OCD. But then my doctor told me that, and then I started doing more researching, and I was like, oh, you can have OCD that's mostly just the obsessive thoughts. And the thoughts can like really overtake your brain, and like it's just nonstop, like, detrimental thinking, negative thoughts, like all this stuff that's just circling around in there, that I think combined with my ADHD, I don't know, it just explains a lot that I would have both of those. So yeah, I mean, the more I became involved in the community too, the more comfortable I became with calling myself like disabled, considering myself a person that needs accommodations. A lot of people feel embarrassed or shamed by needing accommodations. I see that all the time with students who they're like, I've gone through the past 3 years without these, like I really wanted to try to go to school without these accommodations, but now I'm finding myself in a class that really needs them. So I don't know, I feel really passionate about expanding that, about making those kinds of evaluations, whether psychologically, medically, becoming more available, more accessible to people who, and even going further than just, because I work at a university, right? So I'm thinking about the students that are there right now who never got evaluated. And then on top of that, thinking about the students that never even got the chance to even think or acknowledge this before they decided not to go to school, or, knew that they weren't going to get into any place, or whatever their case may be. So that's something that's also really combined with my identity as a Peruvian, as a lesbian, as an immigrant. And I think all of those things really, I think once people get to know me, and then they know all of these identities, like I'm a very specific person. I'm very weird. I sound like Cole Sprouse in Riverdale, but like I just was always off. I was always having so many problems, mostly socially, and then academically, and then like obviously romantically, and with my family, like so many problems with that kind of stuff. So realizing this, and then also realizing that a lot of this is genetic, and like my parents also experience some of these things. They just don't know how to identify it within themselves. And then, thinking about the trauma that they've gone through because of these things, that they, a very, like I said, like Peruvian mentality is like, you got to get yourself through it. You got to think positively, you got to just stop being sad, or stop being confused, or stop being lazy, which is what I was fed to I was fed my entire life from my family. which just adds onto the feeling of being, you know, like I said, dumb and lazy. Because I was like, I don't understand where I'm supposed to get the motivation to like want to put effort into doing these things. So finding something that explains that, and then from then working on and like making those tiny changes to my activities, to my chores, to my work life, to my own personal life. Yeah, that it just helps so much. And it's really wild to think that while I was in school, I wasn't super dedicated at figuring all that stuff out, which I should have been, but obviously, like I said, it's not accessible to just anyone. And just finding a lot of explanation, and really I had to wait until all of these, conditions started affecting my own personal life. Now that I'm financially responsible for all these things, and that I have to work for 40 hours a week, and having even pets, and like having a car and all this stuff, like all this stuff was being affected by my disabilities. So I also realized that it wasn't just an academic problem, which I was framing it in my head a lot just around my academics, but it really just affects every single aspect of my life. And it just explains, and it ties in with my other identities like so much. So I don't know how to even end that.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you sharing about your identities. And I'm also hearing, there's so much richness in what you shared, because I'm hearing, what this labor is to go through this process within a system that's not necessarily designed to help us, right? You have access to evaluations that give people answers. And then beyond just getting answers, right, to getting, accommodations. This world is an ableist one. Able-bodied folks are, are catered to, and it often makes it so that, you naming that professors are suspicious of students that use accommodations, right? That's an ableist mentality, right? The distrust that occurs, and also the, you naming the embarrassment and of not wanting to get accommodations, right? That's all influenced by this ableism. Also hearing the ways that generationally, right, perhaps our family members who may also, have similar disabilities, but don't necessarily have perhaps the language. We're not told, there's still heavy stigma, in Latinx communities and Peruvian communities surrounding mental health and talking about this. If we can't talk about our feelings, well, we're not going to be able to talk about,
exactly
what's impacting us, right? And I'm grateful that you shared what your journey has been, and I'm glad to hear that you are able to. It sounds like you've gotten to a place, right, where you're coming to terms with what this means, right, getting these diagnoses, and then how that allows you to navigate through your world, right, through these different spaces. I'm glad to hear that you've been able to get some answers, that you've been able to find the ways to just navigate, right? It's so difficult to do. It requires a lot of labor. It requires a lot of self-advocating. And, I also think about, what then it means for folks to then center their wellness. So my background is in Black feminist methods. That's what I was trained in. I was trained in the tenets of healing justice. So I generally do healing work, like as a healer facilitator. And my work centers queer, trans, Black, Indigenous, people of color. And so when I hear this, right, when I hear about what people have gone through, the barriers that they faced, I'm also curious as to how, you know, day to day they're centering wellness, how they view healing, how they are healing.
Mm-hmm.
And so my next few questions are going to touch a little bit more on those aspects.
Mm-hmm.
So what does wellness look like for you?
For me personally, it means like not caring about what other people think, and it means like eating stuff that I think is delicious, and spending time with my friends, and getting time outdoors, specifically swimming, is like, you know, a feeling that never fails to give me, like, make me feel like everything's perfect for a second. Those are my main those are my main things that when I have all of those things lined up, I'm like, I am healthy, I am safe. But yeah, I don't know, the best I feel, like I said, is when I'm surrounded by my friends, or like when I'm having healthy conversations with my family, which, you know, it took so long to really understand how to work with them, and to try to make them understand how important these conversations are, conversations that don't end up in like blowout fights and, you know, bad, horrible feelings towards one another. Trying to mediate conversations between my other family members. Like right now, that's something that's super important to me. And like, I guess I kind of view it as like a duty of mine, because I want them to be better. And yeah, like I don't think that, and I also don't think that being well also means like being happy and positive too, because it's just so important to let yourself express emotions. And like, if you are feeling sad, like I have depressive episodes, and you know, I write it out. I know what I need to do when I'm feeling like I can't get out of bed, and that's not get out of bed. Like I'll stay in bed and sleep for as long as I want to, you know, as long as but also I do have someone that lives in my house that's able to push me whenever I ask her to do these things. And I really need these like reminders, and I need to be pushed a lot of the time, you know, because I can't fall into episodes where it can just, you know, I'll just be doing nothing for days, which is obviously to me not healthy. So that's something important that not everyone has. Like not everyone lives with their loving and caring partner that would do anything for them. So, you know, that's another privilege that I have. But yeah, like just learning to identify your emotions. You know, I'm still not fully there. Like I still have a lot of issues with that, but being able to do it more and being able to like vocalize these things, like will change your life. I remember, I mean, I've always been the kind of person that like my anxiety sits at my throat, you know, while my brain is like playing these conversations over and over and over again. Like I have a ball here, and I could not vocalize them. And that still happens to me every once in a while. It's almost like I feel like I legitimately cannot open my mouth and vocalize anything. And it's a very horrible feeling to have. You know, having, you know, anxiety and panic attacks because of that kind of thing is a really horrible feeling. So having people that you're comfortable with, and, you know, having someone that is patient enough to sit there with you for 2 hours, 3 hours, however many hours it takes for you to vocalize like even one sentence of how you're feeling, that's incredibly important. And obviously the more practice that you get with that, the more that you're able to do it, it will become easier. And then I don't know what else would mean wellness to me. yeah, besides like other kinds of like material things, but I think emotional support is just one of the healthiest things that anybody could have. Yeah, not being scared, not being pressured, not being suppressed is that's one of the most unhealthiest things you could have. And it affects your life from then on. Like it will affect it. My relationships were all affected by that. Before going through the process of like therapizing myself. But yeah, that's what I view as my own personal wellness, is emotional support.
Yeah, you're touching on a lot of different ways that wellness can show up, right? In terms of nourishing yourself. You said with good food, going swimming, friends, surrounding yourself with friends, but also, allowing yourself, it sounds like, to seek that emotional support as well, right? To seek it, to receive it, and then
to offer it as well.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And so what about healing? You named, wellness. What about healing? What does healing look like for you?
Healing is a long, treacherous process. There are traumatic things that have happened in my life that even to this day, I haven't even, started facing, because I'm like busy getting over other stuff. I think the main thing that has helped me with healing from these traumatic events is, like I said, vocalizing this stuff. Number one is really putting yourself out there, not even to another person, but just literally writing your feelings down on paper, or going to therapy, or obviously talking to a friend or anything like that. Letting yourself be really, really like sad and I don't know, like crying stuff out, and like feeling all of the anxiety, like not trying to make the anxiety stop, but really analyzing where that anxiety is coming from, and like sitting with it, and just thinking about it in a way where you're also not spiraling at the same time, which is really hard to do. Giving yourself time as well. I have a lot of like I guess emotional like irregulation. I don't know what it is, but like I can jump from one emotion to the next. Sometimes I feel anger super high, which, like I stated before, I don't know if I stated this, but like as a child and a teen, I was so angry. Like I was so angry at so many things. And obviously that was a result of all these things that I had not figured out just yet. But I forgot what I was going to say about anger. Going through traumatic things. I forgot what I was going to say. I don't know. I guess letting yourself feel angry, but not letting it get to a point where you're hurting others. That's really important, because I've had situations where I've really wanted to like get revenge and stuff, and feeling really petty about certain situations and other all those negative feelings, and really identifying those, and like I said, analyzing them and going really deep with it. I don't think it's possible to really get rid of an angry feeling or a feeling of wanting to get revenge, but really understanding that that's not going to fix anything. That's never going to make a person become a better person. If all you're doing is being angry and negative, and like petty and revengeful, I don't know if that's a word, is it doesn't get anything done, and instead it just adds on to like this, you know, cycle of just horrible thoughts in my head. So yeah, I think another main thing is not blocking those emotions, not suppressing them, but also not letting yourself be overtaken with it. I think analyzing them, writing them down, talking them out, letting yourself feel sad, angry, like, yeah, just freaking talking it out helps so much. And there's just so much fear with that. Like I just feel so much fear about that one specific thing. And all my life, I felt a lot of fear about talking about stuff like this. And that fear is just so, so deep and is so internalized for a lot of us, like queer Peruvians. I'm assuming a lot of us have experienced this kind of like familial emotional suppression. So that, I don't know, that fear is hard to get over. I'm sure that for some people, like they think it's impossible to do. But yeah, I don't know what else to say. That's the main thing. Obviously surrounding yourself with people that love you and that actually want something that's good for you. And like I said, with my girlfriend, having someone that's able to push me or like stop me or tell me, you know, you're going too far, or like, hey, we need to like stop, you need to go. She doesn't say that, but I myself, I'm like, okay, I need to go to the next room and like cool off, because I cannot just say what's coming out of my mouth without thinking about it. Yeah, just being more careful. And sometimes that's really hard, especially if you're going through a traumatic event. Yeah, I feel like at this point I'm really detached from it too. So it's hard. And an example of what a prior like therapist told me, one time she had me do an exercise where she was like, okay, if you had your like, you know, yourself that had gone through that terrible thing and was like, you know, self-harming or having these negative thoughts episodes like panic attacks, if they were sitting in front of you, like what would you be able to say to them? And that's something that I feel like I'm still dealing with, like a disconnect. Like it's almost like we are two different people. But you know, at that time I was not able to complete that assignment, but since then I have been able to do it and really think about what would I truly say to someone that was in that situation. Yeah, just not only, yeah, consoling your younger self is so important too. Because also a lot of my trauma is like from my childhood, a lot of stuff that I barely remember, but I know that it's there. A lot of more complex stuff like my relationship with my parents, you know, the kind of just little things that, you know, built up over time. And I always thought were normal to have like, you know, a parent talk to you a certain way or, you know, hit you or do anything like that. And really realizing that, you know, that a lot of your problems, that my problems specifically do come from that. And it's, you know, it's a joke that people say is like when you go to therapy and the therapists are always asking you about your parents, but that's actually so important to talk about because it took me a really, really long time to understand that, you know, a lot of the things that I was dealing with was because of my parents. And that makes a lot of sense. They're the people that I was around the most as a child and a teen. They're the ones who influenced me, who taught me everything. So yeah. it's a joke, but it's very real, I think. Yeah. But now I'm just rambling. Like I said, it's just talking about it and not forcing yourself to be happy, because that's also such a, like, that's not going to get anyone anywhere, to like force positivity into everything, because not everything is positive, and there's really like hard, awful truths about the world. So I think being realistic is also super important. Yeah, and I don't know, the more, I guess the older you get, the easier it's supposed to become, but it's not like that for everyone. So like I said, a part of everyone's healing journey, it's not obviously something mandatory for everyone to do, but everyone should be giving back. I guess not should, but if they can, they should.
Yeah, I'm sitting with everything that you shared. And also thinking about, healing as, if we're thinking of healing as a process that isn't linear either. What we may think we have been healed from or have healed, it can come up in another way. And that's okay too. And naming that we don't always have to be positive, right? There's, that notion of like toxic positivity, right? That's real, right? We are allowed to feel a full range of our emotions and our feelings. And also with that, right, it depends on our capacity too, right? Like, if we're not ready to confront something, right, then we're not. And there may be a time, right? But it's also the time that it takes for us to heal, right? Depends on us, right? It's no one else can put a timeline as to what that's going to look like, and the timeline, right, of what that's going to look like. And so, thank you for sharing, what healing has looked like for you, and your thoughts on healing. But I'm curious if pleasure comes up for you at all when you think of your intersecting Peruvian and queer identities, or how you move through life.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, finding, all these different aspects of my identity helped, like, not only feel pleasure, but just have so much more confidence in myself as well. I think I lived through my life super not confident and super, I guess, self-conscious, and like wanting to hide myself, or like feeling uncomfortable in like the clothes that I was wearing, the way that I was portraying myself. There's just a lot of uncomfortableness that went on with that. So figuring myself out, understanding myself as a queer Peruvian, there's so much pleasure in that. Like, I think about my Peruvian culture and I'm like, there's nothing better than that. Like, there's no better food, there's no better music, there's no better land. Like, there's no better, I don't know. All of that gives me pleasure, thinking about like my queer Peruvian brothers and sisters, like, from all the ones that I've met, I love them so much, and I appreciate their friendship. Like, we always have incredible conversations. When I'm in Peru, like, we can spend so much time together, and it is so much different than being with my queer friends in America too, because they understand a different part of me, and they've experienced a lot more than me as well. So I always can learn from them. I never thought of it as pleasure, but like, it did give me a lot of pleasure to like put all these identities together like a little puzzle, and like use them as framing to understand myself. I don't think that all of these identities all like explain every single part of myself, but it did provide like really, a really important framework for myself in my life. There's a lot of things about myself that I would have never confronted or figured out or thought about until I realized that I was a lesbian. obviously being Peruvian is something that I never came to realize I always was. And I always felt super proud and super into my Peruvian identity. And then again, my like disability, that's something that came on like just recently in my life. So I'm still learning so much about it. You know, I'm going to go back to school and focus on it and really, I don't know. With that, there's also like, there's so much pleasure in focusing your careers within something that you like are legitimately interested in and legitimately want to do something about, and, you know, surround yourself with people that are also trying to do the same thing. That's extremely pleasurable. Like, I started college thinking that I was going to be a finance major, and nothing sounds more painful than being a business major. No offense to all the business majors, but it was not fun. You know, a lot of topics in school did not interest me at all. A lot of even topics within my personal life, like with the friends that I used to spend time with, and even my friends now, like with video games and all this stuff, like I'm not, if I'm not interested in it, I don't want to spend my time in it. What was the question again?
Yeah, it was just thinking about pleasure, if that comes up.
Yes, pleasure. Yes. So yes, you know, getting to know more myself, getting to know more about what I truly enjoy, like understanding that I like watching reality TV and I like watching like Real Housewives fighting each other and throwing drinks at each other, and obviously not being ashamed of that, not calling it like my what do they call it, your guilty pleasure or whatever. Like, there's nothing guilty about it. Like, I have no guilt about liking any of these like trashy TV shows, or just feeling way better in my body than I've ever felt before, even though it's like the opposite of what my whole life I was being told was a good body, you know. Yeah, creating that line in between what other people's perception is of you. Obviously not until your safety is called into question, but like understanding that there's nothing that you can really do to change someone's mind about you, and there's nothing better than just being yourself. And yeah, just pleasuring yourself with the things that you actually like. Like, I did spend a lot of my times with my friends, you know, back in high school and even college, doing things that I didn't like doing, tagging along, like not enjoying myself, having conversations. I mean, to this day, like, you know, if I'm somehow involved in a conversation that's like about, you know, something super academic or sciencey that I'm not interested in, like, I know myself enough to be like, I'm gonna step away because this conversation is boring me, you know, not in a way that's offensive to anyone, but like not putting myself through something that I don't want to do. That's one of the most pleasurable things in life.
I love hearing just the many ways that pleasure shows up for you in terms of finding, you know, sounds like making peace with your identities, right? Or beyond that, right? And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, coming, like just feeling in truer alignment with yourself. And also just knowing what your boundaries are as well, right? And knowing when you want to stay in a conversation, what you allowing yourself to make those decisions. That's pleasurable, right? To be able to have that control, and to know yourself well enough to be able to say, right, this gives me this, doesn't.
I think you know, in my childhood, like I said, I had so much anger to a lot of things, and I was kind of a contrarian at times too. So like things that people really enjoyed, sometimes I said that I disliked just to say it. Like, I remember saying that I hated Barney when I was a child, even though I did not hate Barney. Like, it was not a thing. So also becoming aware that that's a part of my personality trait, and not doing that anymore, because there's a way to communicate your true interests without like trying to make people offended, which is a really silly thing now that I think about myself as a teen, being like, oh yeah, I hate these things because everyone else likes them. But yeah, I mean, yeah. So what was I gonna go? Oh, my friends used to always be like, you're so bitchy. Like, why are you complaining about this football game? Because I was going to the football game and then I was complaining the entire time that I was there because it was so boring to me. And, you know, I cannot pay attention to that. And it's just not interesting to me. It's never been interesting to me. And finally being able to, instead of being like going there and annoying all my friends and having them call me, like, tell me I'm being bitchy, just freaking staying out of it. Like, I understand that I don't have to put myself through that. And I also don't want to make anyone uncomfortable by being there either. Yeah. So really identifying and not being rude, because that's something that I've had to work on a lot too. Which I think is really influenced by the social issues that I had mentioned earlier, because it's hard to tell sometimes like what is acceptable to say and what isn't. I have these like, I guess, social like blurriness. Yeah, but it's literally only experience. If you're dealing with the same kind of like issues that I was dealing with, that's something that you can only learn through practice, really, and seeing what people are comfortable around. And, you know, after being called, you know, a bitchy friend for so long, that doesn't really feel good. So, you know, those kinds of qualities that you can identify in yourself and not like, you know, try to deny that part about me, but also not trying to be rude to anyone else. I have super specific interests, and I know that not everyone is going to be really into that. So yeah, spending time on that with myself and letting myself enjoy it, but then also not being rude about it. Yeah. I just started thinking about that because that was a big problem between me and my friends in high school, because I just seemed like I was being rude, and I was like, I'm just being honest. But I definitely see how I was coming off as rude.
It sounds like, you know, even in that, you discovering, you know, this about yourself, you know, it sounds like you've also been able to, you know, acknowledge it and then shift, right? And that's so important to do, you know, and I imagine that even that, you know, can be pleasurable, I think, to see how you have, you know, changed in a way that feels good, you know, in a way that allows you to navigate your relationships in an authentic way. So I have two more questions for you. I know we've been talking for a little bit, but, you know, just one of them is, before we wrap, you know, what do you wish for yourself?
A lot of things. I wish for myself to get through grad school with little to no issues. I wish for myself to be able to get, you know, a position after grad school that is, you know, it doesn't have to be exactly what I want to do. You know, I have like I said, very specific interests, but I'm just trying to have a career that not only, you know, that I can feel like I'm 100% putting myself in it, but that I'm also getting the same kind of respect from, you know, from my supervisor or the company or whatever, or whoever I'm working for as well, because I think anyone would be able to relate to the feeling of being undervalued at your job, which is another really interesting topic that's come to the forefront of my mind, especially because of everything that happened with COVID and all those employment issues. So that's another thing. I wish for myself to live in Peru for at least a year after grad school. That's what I really, really want. I I don't know. I there's so many other little things that I wish for myself, but those are the main things right now, the things that are at the forefront of my mind. The things that are coming up sooner. I also wish for myself to maintain a good relationship with my family, my immediate family, my sisters and my parents, and be there for my grandparents more than I am right now, because they're not going to be around forever. And I can't, I'm sure, I mean, I can think of other things, but I don't know what else would be worth mentioning. And obviously having my relationship go on, as strong as it's been the past 4 years, and building a family eventually.
Those are, beautiful things to wish for. And I'm a big believer in manifestation. So I will be manifesting these with you. I wish you the best of luck in grad school, for things to come in divine alignment with you, so that you're able, to move through grad school gracefully with no issues, to find that job and that position, to go to Peru, at least a year to maintain these relationships, for your relationship to grow. So I'm manifesting that with you. And my last question is, what do you wish for queer Peruvians?
I wish for queer Peruvians, I wish a world where it's safe for them all to come out. I'm going to take my earring off because it's messing up. I've been playing with it for too long. Okay, I'm just going to take it off. Okay. I want safety and comfortableness for everyone that's a queer Peruvian. I want more safe spaces that aren't just, bars and clubs for them, which are really fun. I did go to one last time I was in Peru, but just so much more, being in the zeitgeist and more discussion about it, open discussion within families, exposing little kids to queer Peruvians. There's a lot of, really famous Peruvian celebrities that just have never come out. And, I wish for a different situation for them, and, for them not to have to die before that kind of secret stuff is revealed. Because I think we see that with a lot of Latinx celebrities too, waiting until they pass to, reveal all these secrets about them. That kind of exposure could change people's lives. I wish for more acceptance within the church. Not only more acceptance, but just have it not even be a topic that even is, that it shouldn't even be a discussion whether or not, the Bible said this or that. Less of a focus on that. And I don't know, I want it to be easier to find each other, because obviously all of my perspective now is coming from it's very, very limeño, right? Most of the population is there, but I can't help but think about all the other queer Peruvians that are in super rural places of Peru, places that are not getting government assistance, that they don't have, running schools, no, electricity even. It's so hard to even just in Lima, it's hard to come across a gay person, an openly gay or trans person. And then when you do, it's your whole family is pointing and staring, and that's not at all how it should be. Obviously it's a long way to go, but in a perfect world, that's how it would be. And I think so much of the Peruvian culture has been created by queer people. That's undeniable. And I think any culture would be able to say the same too. We're everywhere, and obviously more exposure is just going to make more people feel safe to come out. But the exposure also has to be framed in a specific way, in a way that it's not, sexualizing, that is not exploitative, that is not, just seeing a dead body on the news, exploring the lives of the people that have died because of hate crimes, and I don't know, putting it on the net, like putting whole specials on the on the national news in Peru, and talking about people, about queer Peruvians, going deep into it, like documentaries, podcasts, more of that stuff. Obviously, education needs to be way more accessible. That's, like I said, in rural places in Peru, the education system is really, really failing the children. And I don't know. In Peru, a lot of people are focused. I think it's similar to how the United States is, like how the election went on with the whole Trump and Biden thing. It's reminiscent of what's going on in Peru is reminiscent of that. And, I see a lot of people that talk about it almost like it's a sports game, or want to mount it all, to being just, fascism versus communists versus whatever. But these are real lives that we're talking about. And when you really think about it, the negative policies that, either candidate would put in place would mostly affect indigenous and poor Peruvians. So that's another huge thing, is that the way resources are dispersed throughout the country is really problematic. It's too much on the big cities, and we are.
Yeah, it paused for a little bit. But,
okay, what did I say?
It was the focus of the major cities.
Yeah. I mean, the distribution of resources is all messed up there, and we just need more revolutionaries there, I think, and it's really upsetting to understand that everything that has happened with the history leads people to kind of point fingers and lump people in together, and anyone comes close to explaining policies that are socialist, people immediately tend to label them, communists, terrucos, whatever. But that shit doesn't matter. We just need to help each other out, and resources need to be put into the education system there. And we just need, like I said, revolutionaries, people that are focusing on providing education and freaking electricity to the rest of the country, instead of talking about the economic policies, yeah, there's a lot that queer Peruvians need. So that's just a few things, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carla, for sharing your wishes for queer Peruvians, and naming very real needs, and the ways that currently how systems are running are just not allowing folks to have those needs met. And I have loved being able to hear your story, to bear witness to your story. And I'm really grateful that you reached out in the first place, that you've taken time out of your day to just stay here with me, and to just be so radically honest, and to be vulnerable, and to share. I really do believe in the power of storytelling, and I'm always so grateful to be able to connect with more queer Peruvians, and And so before we wrap, is there anything else that you wish to share with me?
I don't know. I shared so much. I anytime that I'm faced with that question at the end of any kind of interview, I'm like, I probably will think of something like 2 days from now, but right now I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, no worries at all. You know, you shared so much richness with me today. And yeah, I'm just so grateful. I'm grateful that we got to meet, that we got to connect. So if there is nothing else, I can go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay.